Hi Manav,
Hi, Meghna. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So just a little background to how Manav and I know each other is Manav has always taken care of the training and development sessions for all the luxury brands that we've had when it's come to Luxurica eyewear. And the reason why Manav is here today is because we can't think of anyone who can explain Oliver Peoples better than him. And he's really going to help us decode what the brand is all about and the personality, the ethos of the brand, how it is made, and everything about it. So we are going to have a very interesting conversation around this. And while we all are going to be learning about Oliver Peoples, there's also a very large incentive which is there at the end of this entire discussion. And so while people are excited to learn about the brand, they're also excited to win a pair from the brand. So all I can say is stay tuned, guys, and keep your ears peeled and listen to every word that Manav is saying because you're definitely, the questions are going to come from the session that we are having over here right now. And you just need to be aware of what Manav is saying, what we are discussing, so that you can get the answer right. So without further ado, let's get started. And I would like to welcome everyone to this discussion on the quintessential Californian luxury of Oliver Peoples. Just to get the conversation started, let's dive into what Oliver Peoples is about and how would you explain the ethos of the brand, Manav?
So, if I have to kind of sum it up, to begin with, in one word, I would say that Oliver People is an obsession. So, when I say it's an obsession, it is indeed really important for any brand, to kind of, produce meticulous pieces of, art that they kind of, look forward to, while they're connecting with their audiences. So when I look at Oliver People, I would say that, when you kind of match up the art and of course the craftsmanship, which is, in the finer details of the product, that is when Oliver People is generated. So when we look at this, I think from the perspective of consumer, there is a huge demand these days for a subtle luxury product. Why? Because, there are people who would not want to kind of really flamboyantly put it up, kind of put some bit of, I would say, loud or maybe, a little audacious product. They don't want to do that. They want to keep luxury to themselves. So when I say the subtle luxury, when I say that, Oliver People is something that is a meticulous art of detailing. So when these two things match is when Oliver People is generated.
Mm-hmm.
And something interesting is that, when we look at Oliver People, it is also one product, that is very understated. I would say you would not even know from far that, are you really wearing, because it is something really personal. I would not want to kind of show it to anybody. That's what I'm wearing and I know what I'm wearing. It's like keeping it to myself. And interestingly, Oliver Peoples have always been, drawing a lot of inspiration from Californian culture. So if we look at the Californian culture, people have been absolutely outgoing, that golden lights, that is what Los Angeles is famous for. So when I say golden lights, interestingly, there are places, which would put those kind of golden lights, onto the arena where you have the shopping complexes or places. So Sunset Boulevard or Sunset Plaza. So there are a lot of them like that. So these are very interesting facts. And then, since it's a city of lights, and of course, when we look at Los Angeles, it's a place known for Hollywood. So a lot of celebrities come, from that place. So that is the reason why Hollywood celebrities. So that is the reason why when we say that, Oliver People is something that builds a lot of traction from celebrities and also for that matter, keep up the Californian culture. So that is what is Oliver People's.
So you were talking about the Sunset Boulevard and you were talking about the Golden Skyline and how a
Yeah.
lot of the Oliver People's culture is inspired by the ethos of the brand is inspired by the Californian culture, right? Or the Californian vibe.
This Californian culture, yeah.
Right.
So Californian culture, when you kind of make a brand, you kind of have a thought process behind it. So, in the initial eras, when, or rather, let me put it in the way that, in the late 80s, when the brand kind of opened their first store in Sunset Boulevard, so which is in Los Angeles. So, the creative directors always had in mind that, we kind of want to put vintage styling in front. So that is why when they started manufacturing the products, they kind of, started with the machine age effect on the products. And that machine age effect is something that, came through from 20s and 30s and 40s, So that particular time when metal working was really important. And the time when, when we look at the vintage era, at that point in time, the finer details, something like a filigree,
Okay.
so those kind of details were really, really important, because they were the epitome of luxury at that point in time. They wanted to keep it subtle. They wanted to keep it absolutely, I would say, understated. They don't want to kind of put it forward like a very loud and very, very, audacious brand. So that's the reason when the creative directors were thinking about it, they, thought of vintage and, 20s, 30s machine age era.
So you're
And
saying,
that is what they produced in the beginning.
okay, so that was your first collection. Their first collection was inspired by the machine age era.
Yes, absolutely, it is. It
Okay.
is. So this brand was acquired by Larry Late and Mr. Schwartz. So at that point in time, it was basically an auction, which they kind of acquired it from, and they had a lot of metal work which was available during the time of auction. So because a lot of it was available from the previous opticals like that of American Opticals and Bosch and Lomb and multiple other opticals. So from there, when they manufactured the frames, they wanted to keep that ethos live. And that ethos, which is vintage, understated luxury, which is, very subtle and, filigree kind of a luxury. So, of course, that is something that was superbly in the mind of the creative directors, the moment they thought of producing their first collection. So
Okay.
that is how it came through.
Could you go back to the auction bit again? That was quite interesting.
Yeah, so it is basically that they acquired that brand. So, and the brand was acquired from a local optician.
Okay.
And, when the name came across that, what should we name this brand? So, interestingly, there were a lot of bills, which were around. And all those bills were named to a person by the name Oliver Peoples. So,
Okay.
hence they kind of, named it as Oliver Peoples.
Okay, interesting. Nice. And metal was a big influence at the auction. Is that what you were saying when?
Metal extremely was, yeah,
Okay.
because they were looking at machine age era, they were looking at the minimal luxury. So that is the reason why it kind of kept alive the entire essence of the creative director as well. So that is how they kind of made their first collection as well.
Wow. Okay. And so, how would you like? Okay, so subtlety, understated luxury, minimalism, all these are aspects of the brand that come out. It comes out really well through Oliver Peoples, and
True.
so that's the interesting part. So that's how. Would you add anything else to the culture or the ethos of the brand, or?
So I can talk for ages on that. So,
Okay.
when I say Californian culture, so Californian culture is, so, I'll give you another example on this. So there is a collection by the name OP5,
Okay.
if you've heard of this.
Okay.
Okay. Now, OP5 takes the entire inspiration from 5 different hotels, which are in California. And all those 5 hotels actually differentiatedly kind of, talk about diverse culture, that's available in California. So, for example, in case if I name a few, so for example, the first one is the Ranch. And then we also have Silver, Lake Pool, then the Line Hotel. So all these depicted different vibrance, and they kind of depicted, their own sense of culture. So that is the reason why the diversity kind of came into play, and there was a collection made on that as well.
Yeah.
So it kept moving from lights, for example, to diversity, to, for example, the art, to, for example, the classical appeal. So all those things were a part of the culture. So that is where the entire Californian culture kind of takes inspiration through, because Hollywood's there, then, the lighting effects there. So multiple things put together. So this is how it is.
Amazing. So I think you've sufficiently like you've established the fact that yes, all of our people's is something that you know about, and we are going to only learn a lot more about it during this conversation. But how about you tell us something about yourself, Manav, and how you are associated with Oliver Peoples?
Okay, so I think by now almost everyone has very well read through my name, Manav Chopra. So I am right now designated in Luxottica to kind of build the training strategies of the brand sales and development. So from the perspective of Oliver Peoples, I would say that I'm connected in both ways. I'm connected in professional way and in the personal way with Oliver Peoples. So when I say professional way, so professional is something that I work with, and I have to kind of talk about the brand, because of course it is one brand that I would love to talk about because it is somewhat there in my personal ethos as well, because it's as I said, minimalist. I personally like things which are absolutely minimal in nature. So then, for example, when even if it is luxury, I want to keep it to myself. I would not want to kind of put it through to the world. So that's what I would like to do. So that is why when I say professionally, of course I'm a part of Luxottica, and of course it becomes really important for me to know about the brand. And when I knew about this, so I immediately connected with it.
Yeah.
So that is why there was a personal relationship that also kind of developed. So that's majorly about me.
And
Anything else that
I see that
I could add?
I see that happening because there are certain brands when you start reading about them, understanding how they started and understanding where their production happens, how it happens, the story behind each of their collections, and then you read some of their blogs. That's when you realize how connected you feel towards a certain brand and finally the product. So it's the brand that you get connected to. Sometimes it's reverse.
Absolutely
Sometimes you start with the product and that can connect it to the brand. But in the
true.
case of Oliver Peoples, I feel like it was a balance of both. Although I fell in love with the brand a lot more after.
Okay.
So I must say that I just reading more and more about Oliver Peoples. You just sink into it, and then you just feel like buying or wearing anything. Like if I am going out somewhere and I know I want to strike up a conversation about, if someone just says, "Oh, that's a beautiful pair of frames that you're wearing," and I would be more than happy to say, "Yes, this is Oliver Peoples," and then give them like a whole history as to how I came across the brand and why I'm wearing the brand. And that's exactly
True.
what Oliver Peoples does. It helps you strike up that
True.
interesting conversation too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah, so then just moving on to because when I was reading about Oliver Peoples and like looking through their collection and things like that, there was a lot of information on the celebrity associations and the talent. So a lot of these celebrity associations and talents that endorse Oliver Peoples uh, could be done both ways. I'm guessing that there has to be a strong connect between the two. So how does Oliver Peoples go about this? And how do they go about selecting, or how do they go about associating with such people around them? Talent, both celebrities and talent, both.
So, I think from the perspective of choosing a person or maybe choosing a product, so, you kind of coincide with the identity. So the moment you talk about identity of, let's say, a brand and, for example, a person,
Mm-hmm.
the moment it kind of connects well, that is when you think that, this is something that I would like to wear. So, when I look at celebrities, it is, I can definitely proudly say that, that this is one brand that really kind of is loved by celebrities, absolutely loved. So, for example, I can talk about Bruce Willis wearing it. I can talk about, in the movie uh, Fight Club, I can talk about Brad Pitt wearing it. I can name a number of celebrities, so, because when I look at something that I really want to connect with, something that is classical, something that is something I know that I'm Brad Pitt. I don't need to kind of talk about myself to anybody else. So that's the reason that I would want to kind of connect with something that I may not want to show off. So that is why when people want something that is absolutely at the stature of the supreme luxury, so that is where you connect with the brand, or you connect with the product that talks about itself. If you look at the logo of Oliver Peoples,
Mm-hmm.
the logo in itself defines that. When we talk about filigree and when we talk about the fine metal working, so all these shapes, which was a triangle or a square or So all these are geometrical styles, and all these geometrical styles were available back then in the vintage era. And when we look at something which really connects, from the perspective of subtle luxury, from the perspective of I would say minimalism, so this brand comes into play. And of course, people who are who are matching that identity would be able to kind of see themselves associating.
Yeah.
So that is the reason why when I say these celebrities make this as their choice, is not because Oliver people wants it. It is from the perspective that there is a personal liking, there is a personal identity match that happens, and because of which you kind of connect with it, and the moment you connect with it, you end up buying it.
Yeah.
So for example, there is a movie called American Psycho. There's a movie called of course we spoke about Brad Pitt in this
Fight Club
Fight
movie.
Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Fight Club. So all these pairs have been bought.
Okay. So none of them are
Yeah, all these.
are given away in terms of yeah, whenever you want a celebrity to endorse the brand, either there is an endorsement fee that they would charge, and then you give them the product and then they wear it, and okay, that's interesting.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So it's the
So that
celebrities.
is the reason
Yeah.
why when we look at all the classical celebrities, so you look at the collections. The collections are inspired from Cary Grant,
Yeah.
Gregory Peck. So all these classical people, who have kind of made their mark, they've played different roles in their lives. So I was reading an article where Cary Grant's wife was actually talking about how well he kind of played his role as a father. And the daughter was talking about the fact that how well he played the role like a husband. Imagine the wife talking about being a good father, and daughter talking about being a good husband. So you could really see it evidently. Only then you could really identify that the person is actually very well connected with the two.
So yeah, so that's interesting. So we were talking about the celebrity associations and how, generally people take to the brand and they choose the brand versus the brand choosing them. And yeah, that makes sense. So and that's where the whole subtle part of it comes in. So I like the whole tie-in that you gave. So
True.
we were also talking about how, a lot of, yeah. So here's the other thing, since now we are talking about the ethos of the brand, and we've spoken about how, the people who wear the brand are the ones who choose it. And so there are a lot of people who love the brand, but what is it that makes the brand so special? That's what a lot of people would like to know. What is it that makes the product itself so special? So the brand by itself is, what goes into the product part of it?
So I can talk in length on this. So for
Sure.
example, when we look at materials,
Yeah.
so, the first thing that I would associate with is, what am I wearing? So, whatever I'm wearing, is that going to kind of corrode, or probably, produce any kind of, I would say, allergy to my skin. So, or anything, because it is a product that kind of sits on your face. It touches you from different parts of your face. So that is the reason why when we choose a product, it has to be something, which absolutely is safe to wear. It's absolutely lovable, when you wear it, for the reason that, it induces comfort. So for example, when we look at materials, there is a material called acetate, which is produced by, the wood pulp and cotton fiber. That kind of a material is also used. Then, for example, titanium, I think you might know that, Luxottica and, for example, Oliver People has a huge association with Japanese titaniums. Fukui again is a brand that was acquired, and something that is absolutely known to produce world-class titanium products.
Okay.
So when we look at Oliver Peoples, you could see that there is there is something that is produced by biodegradable stuff like that of cotton and wood pulp. Then, for example, I can talk about More Trees as a collection, which was produced specifically from the recyclable resources.
That's
And
good to
this was
know.
produced for the reason,
Yeah.
this was produced for the reason that, we are an eco-sustainable organization. So we do not want that, with any of our actions, we could harm the nature. So that is the reason why More Trees was also launched. So there are multiple collections that I can talk about. So, when we look at Cary Grant 2, it is a combination between, an acetate and a titanium product. So the filigree is actually done on the titanium product. So it is not very easy to do that. So that kind of a painstaking job that all these manufacturers do, those who are sitting back in our factories and then producing this absolutely fabulous piece of art.
Yeah.
So all these people are actually putting a lot of efforts when it comes to material, when it comes to, for example, the detailing in terms of the, I would say, the kind of art that goes into it. It could be filigree. It could also be a coined effect that goes onto the bridge.
Okay.
It also could be, for example, a three-barreled hinge, which is on the
I've
temple
seen
sides,
that. Yeah.
right? So it's, yeah. So, and then, for example, I can, again, as I said, that there is a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So when you look at the nose bridge as well, that nose bridge sits as per the shape of your nose.
Which is super.
So
Yeah, there's no
rounded to
gaps.
the nose.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and it is flexible. So the moment you kind of wear it a little low on your face or a little up on your face, you'll be able to adjust it.
Nice.
So, for example, when we look at this brand, we are absolutely confident about what we are producing and what we are selling. So that is the reason, when we look at the warranties, when we look at the pricing, it absolutely coincides with the brand identity and the quality that we produce.
Yeah.
So, 2 years of warranty, or for example, when we look at, the brand identity, so the titanium we use is absolutely of one of the finest qualities.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the association between LA and Japanese like craftsmanship over here as well as Italian craftsmanship, right? So I think there is a
Absolutely.
strong association over there. So what,
Super strong.
yeah,
So,
so how does that work?
Japanese architecture, for example, I can talk about Takumi, if you've heard of this collection called Takumi.
Right.
So Takumi is a name given to, or rather a title, given to a person who has achieved perfection in whatever they do.
Okay.
After like years and years of their practice, after the kind of, artistic effect that they would put into the products. So all put together, when they achieve the perfection, the heights of perfection, that is when they are named Takumi.
Okay.
So, and that kind of a collection, when we look at the titanium collection specifically, the one which is with the clip-ons, the one which is, for example, the Panthos style,
Right.
all these collections are specifically made with absolute finer details, that is really difficult to describe. If you look at the process phases, there are like hundreds of processes that a product goes through. The kind of quality we try to maintain is basically, it super surpasses the certified European standard. So there are a lot of things, that kind of come into play the moment we talk about the Japanese architecture. And then LA, LA will always remain as the essence, because, when we spoke about the lights, when we spoke about the diversity, when we spoke about the, I would say the Hollywood, the classics, all those things will also be a part of it. So that is why, when we look at the product, it kind of comes in total with, something like an acetate sheet over, and then, a product which is titanium at the bottom. So it's an association of the two. So that is how, I would say the comprehensibility of Los Angeles and of course the Japanese architecture kind of coincides very well.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the LA culture blended with the Japanese architecture, which finally makes this product what it is, right?
True.
And where does
True.
the
True.
Italian, because I've also seen made in Italy on the frames. So how does that, where does that play a part?
So it plays a part, of course, Luxottica, as we all know, that is an Italian organization. And from the Italian perspective, I would say that, all the things that we kind of try and do in our factories, the culture is LA, the architecture is Japanese.
Okay.
And of course, there is a lot of detailing that comes through, in terms of the quality orientation, which is actually available in Italy.
Okay.
So the products, for example, are made. Then, for example, they would go for testing. So there are different products, made in different parts of the world. So, in Italy, for example, Italy is known for producing world-class acetates. but then we have to keep the essence of Californian culture alive. So that is why the acetates will be absolutely customized as per the Californian culture.
Okay.
So, that sunset, kind of a golden effect that, golden lights we talk
Yes,
about.
yes, I've
So
seen
that
that.
golden lights kind of come through.
I've seen that. I've seen that in, I think, the colors of the acetate sheets which go in all over people's. Their collections have
True.
a very different kind of, like a golden hue to it, like it's seen. So when you hold it up against the light, it looks like it. You can actually see that. I think you
Absolutely.
can actually see that sunset hue. So that's
Even if
interesting.
you look at the metal frames, even the metal frames are actually made with some kind of golden hues in it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even the gold is not like a very bright gold. It's a different color that I've seen on their
Absolutely. That
metal
is
sheets.
more matte in nature. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. So yeah, I think we've spoken in detail about the product and what goes into making the product. And hopefully that answers some of the questions here, because I did see a couple of people asking us what is it that makes this brand so special. And this is what this conversation is around. Interestingly, Oliver Peoples, uh, though it is not widely known in India, it's a brand which you will grow to love once you start reading about it, right? And this is the introduction to the brand. So you're getting to know about the brand right now and what goes into making Oliver Peoples and what goes into the culture of Oliver Peoples. And now you know that it's a blend between three different places. So you're talking about LA, you're talking about Japan, and you're also talking about Italy over here. So I think we've almost reached the end of our discussion. So I think one last thing which really caught my eye was never a trend and always in style. And I think that's something that you already explained, when you were talking about when you were talking about Cary Grant and how he wears so many
Yeah.
different hats, right? But
True.
the the whole point of never a trend and always in style, could you go more into that, like who would be the person, like so if you're talking about this one, it means that the same person is wearing many different hats, so he can be
True.
wearing his Oliver Peoples while he's playing all these different roles, right? He does not need to switch his
True.
eyewear at that point. The other,
True.
which is never a trend and always in style, so if you could just go a little more into what makes this the mantra of the brand, it'll be really nice.
Sure. So this is interesting. So, when we look at trend, trend is something that phases out after a while. When we look at something that kind of is talking about the latest trends, it will live for maybe 6 months or a year or two. So, and then after that, it'll kind of phase out. But then when we look at something which is style, style is very personal. Style is not something that I would kind of keep changing, because, for example, if I look at my hairstyle, I don't know for how long I've been kind of having this hairstyle, and the reason for that is that when we are adapting to a style, we know that it is going to live with me for like ages and ages together, and it doesn't phase out. So that is why when we say style, it is absolute timeless. So are the products. So okay, now for example, look at the round styles, look at the panthos, look at styles which are squared in nature, soft squared ones, which are like that of a Cary Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Then, for example, look at the detailings, the arrow detailings in the front and then in the temples. So this is something that will remain in style, because that is something that is adapted, that is something that is identified with the personality. Because you are identifying it, that is why it is going to remain timeless with you all the time. It is not going to be phasing out. Why? Because it is something that is lived, because maybe it's a neon. Neon is something that's a color that may kind of live to a certain period, and then after that may phase out. So that is how, when I say never a trend, always in style, is defined. So it's timeless, absolute timeless. So that
Yeah.
is why the products that you see, they are not very outrageous. They are not very experimental. That is something that I would like to wear. So I've been wearing this eyewear like for times together. So, and I would not want to change it the moment I say in my next meeting, or maybe in my next day, but then for example, if I'm changing my genre, so let's say I'm at a professional stature at a particular situation in my life, and I'm at a personal stature in a particular situation, so I would change, because my style would there change, because I have two different things to talk about. So that is the reason why I say that, I may acquire my own style in two different situations, but at the same time, I would not keep changing that style, the moment that particular situation happens again. So that is why I will maintain that timelessness all the time.
So I think that's, if you look at the all over people's culture also, a lot of their associations with art, music, celebrities, it's very timeless. It's not something which just started today and they've picked up. It's not that.
I would certainly love to hear, Hotel California even today, because, it's an old song. But yes, why would I connect to it? Because, that is something that I would love to hear. That is something that I may, sit in a cozy evening and probably with maybe my loved ones, I would like to hear that song. Or maybe, for example, I would, go ahead and then, sit on a sunset beach and probably hold the hand of my loved ones, and then I would still stay there.
Yeah, that's timeless. Yeah,
that's absolutely timeless. You can't really say that it is going to kind of phase out in a moment.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, that's not something that just
so
comes
that
and
is the
goes.
reason.
Yeah, that's something that you would do
True,
every time and you would still be happy doing it. So yes, so
true, true.
so I think that sums it up. That gives you the whole ethos of the brand. What is all over people's? If you have to think about it, it's a brand which says it's never a trend, it's always in style. So since we've come to the end of this discussion, I think this is the moment that everyone is waiting for. So here's
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead, Manav.
a lot of people are writing about Hotel California. I'm sure that this is one of the most loved songs. So that is why I really connected with it the moment you said music or art. In the art also, for example, there are a lot of details that goes into play. Then when we look at Meenakari, it has been there forever. So filigree, for example, has been there forever. The carvings that we see have been there forever. So I think from that perspective, the timelessness kind of really associates well with the brand.
Yeah, they've really brought it out quite well. So it's amazing how when you spoke about the colors that go into it, it's a Sunset Boulevard, and you're talking about the orange skyline. When you spoke about the
Yeah,
filigree, you're talking about the timelessness of filigree and how it's there on the metal detailing. And then when you talk about the
true.
architecture, you're talking about the geometric designs which are there, even in the logo, the circles, the lines, everything ties back into it. And then you go to the craftsmanship, which is the Italian craftsmanship. This brand is so beautifully tied together. It's amazing. So yeah, so I'm right now falling more and more in love with it.
Wonderful.
So
Great.
right, so I think that really sums it up, and we will go into the Q&A. But before we start with the Q&A, guys, yes, this is the moment that everyone is waiting for. Now that you've learned a lot about Oliver Peoples, I'm going to ask you the surprise question, and please don't put it in the comments. Do not put it in the comments, because if you do, you're just going to be giving it away. So here's the question. You'll be DMing us, only direct message us the answers. What was behind the creative director's mind when they made their first collection? So I can repeat this.
I'm sure that, in case if they've heard it, I'm sure that they can answer that.
Yeah, so if everyone's like listening, do they want me to? So let's say it again. What was behind the creative director's minds while making their first collection? Cool. So if you have the answer, send it in to us, and then we will consider the first 5 entries. So I see a lot of people already sending us in their answers. That's great. So I'm so glad everyone paid attention to the conversation when we spoke about it from the start. Right. So let's take some of the questions that have come up. Um, yeah, so I think some people were trying to understand. Okay, so one last time, what was behind the creative director's minds while making their first collection? So yeah, so then we'll just go back to a couple of the questions, and I'm glad some people actually have an opinion on either and which collections they like and which brands they like. That's really nice. I don't think we're going to go beyond me repeating the question again. I think what was behind the creative director's minds while making their first collection?
I'm sure that you would have got some answers.
Yeah, we've got a lot of answers right now. So Let's take some of the questions that have been asked, guys, because there were so many questions in the beginning. Let's see what everyone has to say. Oh, was there only one question? There was someone who asked about the architecture. So I think that's been answered pretty clearly in their geometric shapes, inspiration, and even the other collection that you had mentioned, Manav. I might be pronouncing it wrong. What was it?
Takumi.
Takumi, right? So it was Japanese. How does Takumi come back to the Japanese inspiration, the architecture part of it? How do you
The
connect?
architecture part of it.
Yeah.
Why? Because, when we look at Takumi as a collection, so Takumi was a collection which was inspired from the fact that, when you reach a certain stature in life, which gives you an absolute, top of the line in your profession. So, for example, when you are absolute perfect in whatever you do, so then is when the stature of Takumi is given, the title of Takumi is given. So when we look at producing the eyewear, that eyewear is produced with that kind of a meticulous detail and artwork that needs perfection. It cannot happen without perfection. So that is why the architecture of the filigree that we design over the metal frames is something that becomes really important when we say Takumi.
Okay, so Takumi is the concept, whereas the architecture, which is inspired from the Japanese architecture that you were talking about, right? Or is it
Yeah.
just architecture in general, which is because of the geometric shapes and styles and all of that?
Takumi, for example, when I say it is architecture, of course, yes, but at the same time, when you reach a stage of perfection, so that is when we say that Takumi is the title given. So,
Right.
in while you are making a product, in a brand like Oliver Peoples, you need to have that kind of a perfection. Otherwise, it becomes really difficult for someone to kind of live up to the expectations of the wearer.
Okay, sure.
So that architecture detail is something that can be only reached, when you are, when you have reached some level of perfection in that.
Okay. No, so we were talking about someone asked us about the architecture part of it. So I was just trying to understand, was it a Japanese connection to architecture? I mean, is the architecture inspired from Japanese architecture, or is it architecture in general? Because we're talking about
There are a
geometry.
few people, who've been named in that. So,
Okay.
who have been renowned in terms of the architectural positions.
Okay.
So there are a few people, who come from Japan. So to name one, so there is a guy named Nobu Sekimei. So it's really difficult to sometimes pronounce the Japanese name. So Nobu Sekimei is the name.
Okay.
And this guy has been absolute epitome in terms of, creating world-class architectural designs.
Okay.
So
Right.
these are some of the examples that I can quote right immediately.
Okay.
So that can tell that, when it comes to architecture, there is no comparison with the Japanese architecture. The reason is that, look at the kind of work that they've done in terms of the buildings. Look at the kind of work that they've done in terms of the designs. So all those things kind of come into play the moment you start thinking about architecture.
Nice. So yeah, I think we've covered it all.
So how old is the brand in the Indian market is another question that's coming.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you could give us some insights on that.
So, a brand is seen from a global perspective. So, it's not seen from a geographical nuance. So that is why, when we say Oliver Peoples originated in the late 80s. So that is where it started. And then kind of carried, it is still kind of, carrying a lot of legacy, that sustained for about 30-40 years. And these 30-40 years have been absolute profound in terms of saying that it lived up to the expectation of living the Californian culture with the Japanese architecture.
Okay.
So this is together. So it is in the late 80s when it was found.
And when did it reach? When did it come to India?
I think, if not less, yes, 87 to be precise, Aman is saying. So, yes, it is 87 when the brand came into, or rather, I would not say the brand came into existence, but when the founders, Larry Late and Mr. Schwartz, kind of, took it from the local guy to probably a bigger brand, which is now a world famous brand. And in India, I would say this would not have been very old, probably good about 4 to 5 years old.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Low nose bridge and most of the class I have a high nose, so there's a particular eyewear collection that will suit me. Yes, absolutely. I think I can help you out with that, Rumeen. So I think that answers all the questions, and thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here and for participating in the event, in the session, for being involved, for all the comments. And thank you so much, Manav, for being here and giving us this entire, I mean, the history of all over peoples, the culture, the ethos, for breaking it down so well. It actually helped us understand the different places that the brand takes inspiration from and how they so elegantly put it into this product. So
My
this
pleasure.
this was a beautiful session, and there'll be many more to come. So everybody else just needs to stay tuned, right? So
True, absolutely. I
yeah,
would just, end up by saying
sure.
the fact that, there is an Oliver in all of us. When I say that there is an Oliver in all of us, it is because of the fact that, somewhere or the other, we are playing different roles. We are diverse in nature. We want to be timeless, with the in certain dimensions of our life. So from that perspective, I would say that Oliver exists in all of us.
I agree. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you soon.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.